So we recently received a ton of new information on the upcoming MMO survival game, Dune Awakening. Now we got all of this new information because they ran a kind of playtest for content creators and members of the media where they got to just play and stream and record and talk about a bunch of the early stages of Dune Awakening. And not only did this give us just a bunch of information on the game and earlier points of the game and how it's actually going to play out, but more interestingly, we got a glimpse at how popular this game could be and the general sentiment of just a bunch of people being able to play the game and a bunch of viewers being able to see and talk about what they think of the game from seeing actual live gameplay. And that's actually the main thing I want to go over in this video, the general sentiment of what people have been thinking about the game after being able to see actual players just play it, and the sheer amount of popularity that this game may actually garner on its release, because I also did a video in the past talking about the numbers I would expect to see for Dune Awakening on launch and how popular I could see it being, and based upon some of the numbers we saw from this kind of small playtest, I think it may actually be much more popular than I was originally thinking. Now, first off, we can look at some different numbers that we actually got to see during this playtest, because this playtest was focused on content creators and people in the media, so there wasn't actually a ton of keys given out, and we can actually see that on the Steam charts, because the game didn't even hit like 1,000-person concurrent peak with this most recent playtest, so they weren't giving out like thousands and thousands and thousands of keys to a bunch of random people. It was a relatively small playtest just for content creators and people from the media and journalists and things like that. But even based on this small of a playtest, on Twitch, Dune Awakening became the second biggest category on Twitch during these playtests. The most amount of viewers I saw in a screenshot was 217,000 concurrent people watching people play Dune Awakening. So this was absurdly massive. There was no other game even coming close to these numbers, and this was primarily just people watching, knowing they wouldn't even be able to play during this playtest. And that definitely bodes very well for the launch of a game, because during the launch it would most likely be a lot more people watching on Twitch. Even if people are playing, a lot of people will still have like a stream on their second monitor, or a bunch of people will be watching it to see if they want to buy it. And usually with big launches and everything, they'll usually have Twitch drops, which just multiply the amount of people watching in those categories. So just having this small playtest, having 270,000 people watching at one time is absurd. And not only just because that many people are actually watching it, but because of the generally positive sentiment after this playtest, I think the launch is going to be absolutely massive now. Now, going into the general sentiment I saw around the game after these playtests or during them, I saw two really funny articles that kind of bode well for the game. So first off, we have PC Gamer, and the title of their article was, "After 25 hours of the Dune Awakening beta, I'm sold on it as a survival game, but still a bit iffy on the MMO parts." But then we had another article by Massively Overpowered, and its title was "First Impressions, Dune Awakening is an MMORPG pretending to be a survival game." So these are two articles with basically the exact opposite titles, the exact opposite sentiments, that both actually seem to be positive on the game for different reasons. Now, one of the reasons I think these two different articles being complete opposites is actually good for the game, because one of the biggest tenets of them creating this game, and one of the biggest things that we're trying to accomplish, is allowing you to play this game as a large sandbox in any way you want. So one person feeling that it's an MMO game with survival elements, and one person feeling like it's a survival game with MMO elements, actually plays very well into it being a sandbox that you can do anything you want in. Do you want to be somebody that primarily takes part in these MMO aspects where you're doing really big guild v guild battles all the time, where you're taking part in the player traded economy? Or do you want to be somebody that just goes out on their own and stays in the PvE focused Haga Basin zone and kind of just builds up their base, builds up resources, and plays as kind of a more solo survival game experience? You can do both of those things and have a ton of content to do playing in those very different ways. And then you have every other type of play that plays into the different elements of the game in varying amounts. So I think actually having these mixed opinions on what parts of the game are like the primary elements is actually really good for a game when you're trying to design it around being a sandbox that you can do whatever you want in and partake in whatever pieces of the game you want. And then even looking past different articles and different media, just looking at a lot of the chats or the streamers playing the game or Reddit or anywhere else people were talking about this game, the general thing I've been seeing, the general opinion is that a lot of the people that have been paying attention to the game think it actually looked better than they thought it was going to, which is probably one of the best compliments you can get for most games. Unless someone thought it was going to be horrible and now it looks decent, thinking it looks better than you thought it was and you are already interested in the game is just generally a good compliment and bodes well for the game. But then just the more general gaming community, having all these streamers playing it that may be from different games, and having the general sentiment being that the game looks pretty good and people are more positive than they are negative, also bodes very well for the game. Now, there's definitely still problems with the game. There's definitely still some stuff that's buggy. I think the combat is still the weakest portion, like I went over in a previous video, even though it does look a bit better in this, especially with kind of just general players playing it. I think it looks a bit better, but I think the combat still needs improved a lot. I think animations in combat and just character animations generally need improved, but a lot of the elements actually look good. A lot of people have been really excited about how well they created the Dune universe and Arrakis in this video game. It actually feels like the universe. It's super cinematic. The graphics and a lot of the different effects and just the immersion in the world is really good. A lot of the survival aspects are really good. I think they have a lot of the survival elements and progression in really good places. So a lot of the game is seeming to be pretty good, and even things like performance seem to be pretty decent. Obviously, they could be a lot better, and it'll get worse as much more bases are created and as you get into much larger battles. But a lot of this game was seen to be pretty positive by a majority of the places I saw talking about this game during this one playtest. And keep in mind, this is probably the least finished we're going to see the game up until launch. The game was delayed for a few weeks so they could polish it up a bit more. It also seemed like they were still working on some decent sized overhauls for some of the combat aspects in the game, even more specifically some of the melee aspects. So it seems like they also delayed to try to get in some of those changes to combat, which again is one of the, I think, weakest parts of the game still. So I think we're going to see the game in even a bit more of a polished and optimized state when we actually get it in the summer of this year. So I think when you take this playtest, all of these streams and videos, and look at them as a whole, I think this was actually a super successful playtest for the game. And I think it was a super successful first look for a lot of people's first time seeing Dune Awakening. But that's all I want to go over. So thanks for watching.
Meet hundreds of other players in the vast online world. Befriend or betray those you meet. Form a wary alliance, in this case, a spit dart rifle and a still suit, for your help taking down territorial deserters. Working with others will always increase your chance of staying alive. The Deserter Base. Climb to a vantage point and prepare for violence.